So I'll be working on the first template that you sent me, and this is a request from one of our VIP, one of our subscribers. So, and I'll start with normal stuffs here. HTML head. What will I call this now? I think I should call this UI design. So it should have a title. I'm going to be writing my own custom CSS. I'm going to be based on just CSS alone. So link, my ref, style sheet. Okay, so our style sheet is here, but blank. So let's get to know our body. So, well, you can't see the design until everything is done. So what I want to do is, I have a basic design. I have a background. So let me just set up the background. Background is pretty simple. I think some brownish color. Yeah, but this color is not what I'm looking for. Something in line with gray. Okay, so I think that's something like this. Then I have an image which will be sitting somewhere here. An image, but there's a big container. That container is sitting in the middle of the entire page. So I have a div. So I'm giving it a name, a class name. Yeah, I'm gonna give it main because that's the main thing on this whole page. Main is going to be a grid, kind of, and I want it to be centered here. So I can give it some settings. So it's going to be an ID main, because we're going to have one of it. So obviously the display is going to be a grid. More about that later. So background color. So I need it to be white or different from this one. It should be a construct. So since you guys might be seeing it somehow, so I will need to make it so obvious that it will be different from what is there. Then I need to be able to put contents here. Okay, so that is visible. That will be what our content will look like. So I think I need to make the body a grid, because the whole thing is going to be, the body can be a grid so that I can place the item in the center. So the item I'm placing is this, my main. So whatever I stretch my main to be, it will be stretched. So this should look like this. So I can give this my width some specific range or padding. I know I want to do padding. Okay, 10px. 10px, okay. So let's do 10px like that. Border 1px. Okay. Then this box, I want it to be big. this, let's provide a width to this, and let's make this 80%. I think 80% is okay. So let's go ahead and specify a grid content. I want to make it a grid also. The display should be a grid because I want to place some of the item. I want to place an image here and text here. So these are individual item. So here there will be image, and this part here will be text. This will be text based, this will be image. So we need to go and sort out image online. But before we sort out image, I want to, let me go and get an image that will sit on the left hand side of this part of the screen. Okay, I think I've seen what I'm going to use, but I need something more rectangular. I said old buildings. Why are you giving me this? Does this look like an old building to you? Okay, I think I'll use this. I saw one now. Let's use this. So let's bring in the image in pg.jpg. Okay, so you can see our image there. Immediately you make, some sizes to it, it will start coming up. So let me make changes to this one. So there is a text, there are something we need to put in inside this section as well. There's a text on the bottom and there is a text on the top section. So we can create an arbitrary height, but before we do that, we need to put these guys in a group. So let me write image here, and this part I'll write text. So this part is divided into two. We need to make this form in a grid form, So we need to implement something here which has to do with grid template column, and I will use 1FR. So 1FR, what that does is that one fraction and one fraction. So we need something like this for it to stop here. So I can do 3. 1 is too much. Let me see if it will accept decimal. Oh, it does. So if this one is 3.3, this can be 1.5. So it's too big. So let me do 3,1 and see the difference. 3,1, 3,1.5. (3,1.6). I think this should be good. Now the next thing we want to do here is want to increase the height of this one. That's the image here, and that can be done by specifying the height here. So we can also use minimum, meaning it can grow. So irrespective of what we have there, it's allowed to grow. So you can specify the background not to repeat. Background repeats, no repeat. But there's a problem. It's then stop abruptly. So we need to make it stretch. And that's under background position. We will now specify that it should. You can also do center. We'll still come back to adjust that. Background image, background repeat, background size. We'll tell it to cover. There are two options. You can say cover or contain. So you can see the advantage of cover. Cover makes sure that it's containing everything. So you might not need this positioning anymore. Oh, the position is also important because it covers. You can decide to say you want the base to show first or from the top. You want the top to be the first thing that shows, then downward. Or if you want the bottom is what you want to show, then upward. Then you can do that kind of feature. So the more you increase the view of what you need to see, the more information that you get in your image to see. So that can be a thing if you are concerned about the bottom, so it can grow upward like that. So let me give you that scenario. So this is a scenario whereby your content will grow from the bottom to the top. So let's go ahead and just paint this guy 400 and let's leave it at bottom. So I think growing from bottom to the top seems fair enough. So this is the padding we gave. We gave it, I think 5 should be okay. 5 is okay. Then that sharp, those edges look so sharp. So let's do border radius and let's do 2px. Then this image also looks as if we need, let's even do 5 and see what we have. Yeah, it looks subtle now. Let's do the same thing to this one, but this one we can do something like 2. Okay, so the next part I want to look at is there's a text here that comes up here that we need to put, but it has a background and there's something going on the bottom. So let me go ahead and start tackling that bit. So here we have images. Under the image, I can provide the text here, contextual information, but there's a sizable distance from where it should start from. So I can just do a div and start typing the information that I have here. I have even, I can say a dot there. So I can do a UL, even though it's not necessary. The information there says sustainable build. So what next here is okay. So I have that information right there, but I want to do so it's requesting me that I do this one by force like this, or else it will be warning me of that information. So let me give this guy a name and call it highlight. So I have highlights. So my highlights will have background of is blur, but I can just use white. And this my white to be transparency. And I can specify the width. So let's go and align the image. Whatever is in the image, we align text align right. No. So I can use float to move this guy to the right. And I can clear my float here. Once I'm done, I can clear my float like this. So whenever you use float, you have to clear it. That's a rule for floats. And this is how to clear floats. Do clear both. That will be done. So I want to also provide, we can use that method, or we can use positioning to move it to the right. I think I should use positioning instead of float. So if I want to use positioning, I will just specify position, then top, so you can specify how you want to move it across the screen. Then if you want to move to the extreme right, you say right 0. So we'll have left 0. That's from the right, left. So if you want to move it right, we'll have a problem there. Positioning because of the right alignment. So I'll use another method, and that method is called the margin placement. So I can say that this one should have margin right or margin left to be auto. So that the left will be automatically, and this one can then decide where it will start from. So this will start from the right. Then I can determine space to give to the right. Right will not be auto. If right is auto, it will be in the middle. So right can be 20. So that will give it that kind of distance. So another thing I want to also do is to kind of make it form in the middle. I noticed there's a border around everything. So I can go back and copy the border radius and have the border radius attached there. I think this border is more here. Okay, so let me try and form the blur effect. Let me see if I can get the blur effect done. So there is what we call backdrop, even though is not a standard CSS, but I would like to do it. But this is how to do a kind of a background transparency. So when you set the background, then you set transparency. It will depend on what will be there. So you can pick any color, and the transparency will just shoot out. So the color that show on the font is white. So white can be there, but you will notice that there's this background lingering, which is okay. So, but for what we have in the picture, this can be good. But if we want to do the blur effect, let's see if it will come out the way it's supposed to come out. So there's something we call backdrop filter. So you can then specify blur, and you can then do how much. So I want to do by this amount of pixels. So you can see that it has that blur feel to it. You can still see what's in the background, so it gives you that blur feel. So notice that this is highlighted because it's not supported in other browsers, but we can use it anyway. So if we do 1px, we have this transparency. If we have 5, I think that gives it the saying that we want it to be there. So 5px is okay. So we can specify for Safari by using WebKit backdrop filter. I think this should be okay. So we can use these two guys. Let me see if what this one will do. So what if I did not specify this one? Okay, I think I will use both of them. So let me see if I remove this one. What do I have? Okay, I still have the same thing. So I will use this feature. So it's more like a glass effect, but that we still do. And it's gearing towards white. Yeah, something like this. I don't like the font that I'm seeing here. So let me change the font totally. Nah. Okay, so the top is not good. We need to add top to this guy, and we can use margin top, and we can go into the hundreds, I guess. 100 is too much, so let's do 50. Okay, so we are done with that bit, but we need to patch this guy very well, and even the white is too white. Okay, so we need to pad this guy. Now that is too much. So the padding should be 5, okay. So let's deal with the dot notation that is there. That's UL. UL. So we should focus on the top rather. Top and bottom. So we can do it. Then we can specify that the second li should not have, this one can be bold, the first li should be bold. So the first one can be bold. Then the second one, we don't want it to have so is the last child. So the last child, what do we want the last child to do? Display lists. The list style should be none for the last child, which is what we've been able to do. So we need to increase the width of this box. It's 200, so 250 should be enough. I think the font is too big for everything. So let's reduce the font size of this one. Okay. Okay, so let's go to the bottom of the site, which is here. There's something underneath the site. So we need to create another element, which is here. And this time around, it's not going to be highlights. I'm going to give it another name. So we can give it div class. So what name is it going to, what name are we going to call it now? We can give it, let me just say message. Footnotes. And let's go ahead and put the content of what is going to be there. So let's, even because the content there is quite big, so I will just say h2 or h1. You can say h1. Monitor your property value and make smarter investments decisions today. Okay, and let's see how this will fall to the bottom. So let's go and style footnotes. We have to use positioning to align to the bottom. So the container itself has to be relative where we want the item to be. But let's go ahead and start aligning. So we have our footer there. We have positioning, relative. We have title, top, or let's say bottom. So we need to specify where it will be bottom of. So obviously it will be bottom of the image. So the image itself needs to be relative so that the footnote will be absolute. So if we, by default, the body is relative. By default, the body is relative. That is why it's jumping on the bottom of the entire page. But we must make the container that is inside, which is image, we must make it relative so that it knows that it should default to the next element. So here needs to be relative. So it will know to stay inside here and not inside the body. So now that I have this, the next thing I want to do is to style it to meet up our demand. Okay, so I need to go ahead and give it some, distance between here and there. So we need to create padding. Okay, is it okay? So I think that is okay, but the bottom is too much. But you can always go negative to force it to go down more. So you can do negative. But instead of us do negative, you can change the one for the bottom. So top is 20, or top is 0, right is 20, bottom is 0, left is 20 px. So this should be okay. So we can then focus on the H1. The font looks quite, much or larger. So you can do font size to be 20. Let's do 30 is quite much. So let's do 25. Then you need to use the color that matches what it is we are doing. So we are done. The next thing is the images that I'm sure you can put those images there. You can use grid to align those images to fall into the kind of bandwidth you want to do. So the height I'm thinking that this should fall under can be 600 actually. So 600 kind of look like a good fit for what we are doing, but you can always make the height adjustable. Okay, so now let's talk about this right hand side. What are we doing on this right hand section? So this part here is pretty straightforward. So we'll just put in a logo here, and afterwards we'll put in text and a button at the bottom. So let me get in process guide logo in here. So our logo comes in here, but I have a padding that this needs to fit in. So our text is what I'm using. So I'm coming here to specify main and text. So I have to be inside main, then text. Instead of calling it text, let's say right. That's better. So this can be right, like so. While we can then decide the padding. Let's say 40 px. So it's not enough. So but it's a start. 40 px. The top is more. So the top can be 80. Let's say 60. Top right can be 40. Bottom can be 20. It will match the bottom of the text that we have there. Then left can be 40 as well. So we can increase the top to, let's say 100 and see the result. Okay, so I want it to match. So I want these guys to match each other. Or let's make this 80. And you can always reduce this one anyhow you wish. So that place where we have our text, that's where our logo is sitting. So I can come in here and start putting my information. IMGSRC. I have my logo, PNG. Of course, my logo is too big. So you can design, you can specify the height of your logo any which way. You can use you can decide to use CSS to style it, which I will use. ALT is equal to logo. So let's go ahead and use this to decide what our logo should look like. IMG, then the width can be 100 px, and I have that already. So 110, is this looking good? Okay, I think this is looking better. So the next thing is major part of our text to introduce what is going on. So I can use H2 for this one. And this is talking about the Simpler Data Platform for sharper property insights. Okay, then I have a smaller text. I can call it small. That is so small. I think I'll be able to say sharp, but let me type it in. When it comes to only a get market. Okay, get market insights and data. So how do we style this to make what we have? But before we go ahead and style it, let me write all the data so that the whole thing will make sense as we go further. We have these checkpoint effects. So let me see how I'm going to implement this check feature. We have this one that denotes, I'm going to put all the text list here. So I'm just going to put them quickly. It's one data entry. I'm going to repeat this for the next 4 records so that I don't waste time at all. So this is what we're going to have here. And finally, we have a button that sits at the end. So I'm going to have this one. I'm going to use the same method I use here, footer. I'm going to use this one called footer here, but at this time around, I'm going to put a button at the bottom. So instead of this text, it's going to be a button. So I'll just use an anchor and then style it. But yeah, I'll use an anchor and then style it. Now call it button. So we have quite a lot of styling to do. Create free account has fallen short, and that's the styling we put on footer. We made footer, on the bottom, but remember that we had to make this guy absolute, or relative rather. So the right side has to be absolute, which is here. So this guy has to be absolute on that position, relative rather. So we have it there. You can see the color, but because we are using something different, so I can make this color tie only to H1 so that that color will be perceivable by this. and we can go and do our button freely like so. So our button is gonna have, I think, the same color, but the font is just gonna be normal. We're gonna go with background color of something like green, but not shiny green like this. Definitely not this kind of green. More like a dirty green. Then I'm gonna have a display block. We need to define the footer for the right section separately for the one from the left section. So let's give this guy a proper name. Instead of giving it image, let's call it left. So now that we've called it left, everything has scattered. So where's the guy? We change all these guys to left. Okay, now that this guy is left, so let's tie this one and make sure that it's only responsible for left, and this one is also responsible for this left, so that we can properly style the right footer, in its own glory. Then we can do something like this and say right footer should look like this. We're still going to use the relative guy, but this time around we are going to specify some other parameter. This width gives it all this information. I want it to be able to specify the width. Okay, so the next thing I want to do is to then give this guy what is due. So padding 10 px. So we need to be a little bit smaller. Font size. Then we need to say text decoration none. That way the underline goes away. We need to create border radius. Middle 5. Okay, so that settles that for now. That's settled for now. So let's go ahead and touch base on all these guys. These are not looking pretty at all. So first of all, they kind of look big. So let's crunch them down. And that is right H2. I call that one H2. So the right for H2 needs to get some makeover. I think that is not too bad, but let's do 18. So that's not bad. But in terms of the alignment of the fonts, I can do something like this to break the text. Okay, so that text looks better this way. It looks better broken. Then the small, this part here is small. I think the font is not bad, but let me change the text, the color rather. So I'll say right, small, color, gray, so that this should be dots, right. Then let's go to the checklists. The checklist part is where we need to do some checklist in there. how do we bring this checklist over here? So we need to do some custom stuffs. So let's do write ul li. So all li's that are under write should have a specific settings. And what are the settings that we want it to have? We want it to have, want to set the background image, and that's to have a checklist like this. So we need to go and look for an image that will give us that checklist. Very important. That image that will give us the checklist is what we need to go and get right now. But before we do that, we can also provide, because this distance is too much, so I will give it a good distance. But before we do that, we can first set the check to be nothing, and that will be by specifying list style. So we can say none. Then we now specify our own that we want to put. So this starting from 0. Before we put the image in, I can also style the smaller part. That's the one on the bottom, which is this one here. So I'll leave this style like this. So anyone that has span this way, the display should be block, so that it will start on a new line, and the color should be gray. So you can see that popping out, and I can reduce the font kind of. I don't know if I should reduce the font, but let me try. So you can see what the reduction brought into the system. So let's say 13. I think 13 is okay. Let's now make the main one 12. You can do 13, 14, 13. 14, 13 is okay. So we are now left with how to bring in the checkbox inside, the check sign, the green check sign. So let's quickly go online and see if we can get help. So we'll do free icon. So we're looking for a checkbox. So there's quite a lot, guys. So we just pick the one that has free transparency or so. I think I will do this guy. I like this. Okay, so we can bring this and call it check mark, but I'll just call it check. So how do we bring that to the other side? Very interesting. How do we bring it there? We use the background set property. So here on each of my L1, I specify the background image. Background image should be URL check mark. Then I can specify margin. it's still not showing. Let's set background. So something must be wrong with the size. So let's check background size. So let's first use cover. So you can see that the image is so big. So we're just seeing a portion of it. So you must be able to specify the size that you want. So let's say 20. Now we're saying it is 20 px. So we're bringing it down to 20 px, but we're not supposed to repeat it. It's repeating itself on each axis. We just want one of it. So we tell it not to repeat itself. Background repeat, no repeat. So we have our one there, right, which is showing. We need to move the entire margin to right. We need to move the entire thing to the right. So what do we move? We move from the list, right, to the right. So you can do padding left. So let's use 30. So that gives you the effect, guys. That's it. So we can create, if the distance from each of the items is not enough, we can use this one to create that distance. So if we use 10, it will give us more distance. So I can put the height of the entire main to be 600, so that I want to be able to move this guy along with this one as well. So let's see why this one is not moving down. This is our left. So our right should also be doing something like this. So our right is not doing exactly like that. So our right is just doing a relative. It's not putting into the bottom. So we also need to put to the bottom. And maybe not exactly what that is there, but at least it's supposed to move to the bottom. So this guy needs to be absolute. Let me see what left does. Left does absolute. Yeah, correct. This is also absolute. But now it needs to find itself in the middle. Apart from that, we also need to create that padding effect we have there. So right has this effect. Okay. Then we have, I need to get to see what left is doing. Left is doing this, absolute. Right is also doing this. So that will give it to raise up. You need to rise up. So let's make that guy go up. Okay, so let's center our footer. The button can then have, we need to have a width, a specific width for our button. Okay. Let me try 100 and see what happens. Okay, because I want it to center actually. If this guy will do width of 200, and that should be it. This button can come up a little bit anyway. Okay, guys, I think that is everything we have for this particular demonstration. So let me quickly do a quick review. What I did was I implemented I use a grid, obviously here, and purpose of the grid is so that I can separate this content here, the main content left and right, and I have it here left and right. So let's look at what's made up left and right. This is the main item. The whole body was also a grid, and I was also using place item to put the main inside center. That's what I was doing there. So this is the main. What the main does is to specify the width, and the fact that the main is also displaying a grid allows me to do left and center here. So we'll get over that one. So the background color is there, padding is there. This grid template column, what it allows me to do is what allows me to specify the width of this one. This 3FR, this 1.6 FR, which you can manipulate to give you quite, a number of results as you move around with them. So this, determine how your content is going to display. So if I want 50-50, this is how I do it to give me that result. So this guy is a very nice tool to actually make use of. So just use 1.6. It allows you to put in decimal and everything. So this is like a ratio of what you want to get here. Border and minimum height. This minimum height is dynamic for me to be able to play with the content to give me what I want. So you can use, a variable depending on what content you're trying to feed in. So this is me just deciding on what kind of height to use. So I use 600. Okay, that is for the main content. So now the left side, I was calling it image before. This left hand side, this is what I did. I put in the background image, said it should not repeat, align it to the bottom by default. If I do top, it's gonna start my content viewing from the top, but I wanted, based on the image that I'm doing, you can also do left, several dimension you can do. So this happens to be something that works for me for now. Then the size of the image, I use cover. You can use cover, you can use contain. Contain means it should contain inside the location. So cover gives it this effect that it's going to contain, it's going to fill in everything. So the word is fill. So cover is like filling everything. In case if you have improportionate dimension. So border radius, position relative. I use the position relative because I put this one at the bottom. If you didn't specify position relative, by default, it will fall on the body. So because I want the content of this site to fall within this place, I have to set the position of the left to be relative, so that when I now do absolute, my absolute is going to be relative to the first parent element that we have there. So the highlights part is this section where I did some maneuver. I did background blurring effects. Even though the blurring is no more visible anymore, the blurring is not coming because there's no image that is blurring over. So the blurring is kind of useless for this image, but it's still there. And I also did some playing around with colors. You can play around with colors to define what it is that you want to do in that side. Okay, so that's sort that out. How did it go to the right hand side? Very important. What I did was to implement margin alignment. You can use margin to do alignment inside your text. So this highlights took over the whole space. So let me give you an idea what that means. So if I do this, by default, elements align, align to the left by default. So if you want it to move around, and you can use width to specify to limit, the display. So this is the way it is before. So you use specifying width, tell it that, hey, I want it to be this size. Then you specifying that it should, margin left should be auto. So it will automatically push it to the right. Okay, so the next thing I did was to make sure that the first item is highlighted and is bold. That's what this one does. First child is bold, then the last child has no style. Very simple, straightforward. So I didn't make use of this. This was not made use of anymore. Then my footer part, I put everything to the footer. The images that shows there, I think it's part of the image. So that's why I didn't put any image here. So this footer part, what I did was that I say anything left footer should be absolute. And I think this is the same to the right one. Let me check what is on the right hand side. Okay, the right hand side, what's it saying? I did some, okay, so the right hand side is kind of the same. So what I can do is I can combine the style. I can combine the style and do something like this. What that means is that everything that I did, oh, okay, it's looking like they are different too. Because this one now is going to down. So let me go and leave it as it is. You can see that this one is way up. So I did some modification to the bottom parts. But these are unique things, or there are similar things that I did up. So I can go and inherit from that. So this can be a kind of inheritance like so, meaning left and right should have this effect. So therefore, if I don't even need to segregate anymore, okay, it's okay like that. So that when I now go to right footer, what happens to right footer, I'm just concerned about the bottom alone, which is 25, which is what it's doing right here. Okay, so what else do I do here? Right, I just started putting right, that right should be relative because I'm going to do something on the footer section. Then padding allows me to put it in this dimension. Then, and I do right image so that I can do the size of the logo. I fix that these other ones are very straightforward. So that is the end of this class. I'm doing the next one right away.